Welcome to Art Bytes, short encounters with the collection of the Marianna Kistler Beach Museum of Art. I'm Catherine Slogic. I'm the Associate Curator of Education at the museum. And today I'd like to share two lithographs with you, seasonal lithographs by artist Dale William Nichols, a Nebraska artist. They're called Midwest Morning and Company for Supper. Dale Nichols was born in 1904 in David City, Nebraska. Similar to Kansas artist John Stuart Curry, his family owned a grain and livestock farm, and Nichols did not like manual labor and farm work. However, the farm somehow held a deep spiritual connection for him, and like Curry, he revisited his childhood home and his art despite living elsewhere. Encouraged by high school art teachers and funded by his grandfather, William Pullman, Nichols went to Chicago in 1924 to study art. He attended the Chicago Academy of Fine Arts for only 2 months before deciding that he was really not a student. But he did visit lots of museums, became involved in the Chicago art scene, and made many connections. He was also a musician and worked as a jazz pianist until he found his job in the graphic arts industries. Nichols spends 15 years in Chicago. In 1932, he opened Dale Nichols and Associates studio, and his work was featured in packaging, calendars, illustrations for books, fashion, newspapers, and he was also a Carnegie visiting professor at the University of Illinois. His work, like Norman Rockwell's, was featured on the covers of magazines, including the Saturday Evening Post and Women's Day. Nichols starts painting around 1933 or 34 at the recommendation of a friend, William Kittredge, who was a Chicago art director. And the Red Barn and other rural topics become his go-to. In September 1939, he was featured in Time magazine, and The End of the Hunt, which we see in the lower corner, which was painted in 1934, won prizes and then was purchased by the Metropolitan Museum of Art, starting Nichols' career as an artist. Very similar, again, to Curry's baptism in Kansas. On leaving Chicago, Nichols travels extensively. Annual visits almost to Alaska, inspired by the work of Rockwell Kent. He lives in Arizona in the 1940s in Tucson, and briefly opens a school of art at Tubac on the Mexican border. He works for Encyclopedia Britannica, and he also becomes good friends with Maynard Dixon, who was also a mentor to Curry, and Curry also spent time in Arizona. Once he leaves Arizona, he travels extensively: Brownsville, Texas, New Orleans, Michigan, Biloxi, Nevada, California, has several wives. His fifth wife he marries in Guatemala, and she was a native woman. And he makes a living in Guatemala studying Mayan art and archaeology and writing about it. But throughout all of this, the Red Barn from his childhood remains sort of a major topic, although he does paint some of the other places that he lives. Stricken with Alzheimer's, he dies of prostate cancer in Sedona, Arizona in 1995. Nichols is considered an American scene artist. He links rural America and nostalgia. His work is realistic, but at the same time sort of mythic and spiritual. The American scene movement was a response to the social, economic, and political upheavals in the 1930s. But unlike the social realist artists of the time, Nichols' work is really not political, and it really draws comfort from the idealized rural past. The clean white houses, the well-kept red barns are often, and he's often considered the fourth regionalist, along with Grant Wood, Thomas Hart Benton, and John Stuart Curry. Stylistically, Nichols tends to abstraction, and you can see that here as we look at Midwest Morning, which is a lithograph from 1945. His buildings appear mainly as shapes with relatively little detail, and there's a huge focus on positive and negative space. In this, you can see the influence of artists Rockwell Kent and Maynard Dixon. Dixon was somebody that he painted with in extremes of weather in Arizona, and the winter weather is an extreme that Nichols really loves, which comes perhaps from his time in Alaska. Nichols plays with his buildings like children's blocks. He even coined a term, rectahedron, and you can see that his compositions are very orderly. He uses a grid pattern. He moves the buildings around until he gets them as he wants them. The second thing that he does is he really contrasts negative and positive space, and he does that by using light. Both Rockwell Kent and Maynard Dixon had some similar aspects of style. And one of the ways that we know about this is that Nichols corresponded at length with his niece, Ruth Nichols, and he called these the paint the light letters. The theme of winter holidays remained prominent in Nichols' work all through his career. And one of the most beloved or quintessential of these is Company for Supper, which was published in 1948 for the Associated American Artists. This was done while Nichols was living in Arizona. So you can see here, again, the fact that the Nebraska scene remains part of his art no matter where he lives. What we see is after a huge snowstorm, a rural family pays a visit to a neighboring farm, breaking the isolation of the Midwest winter. Nichols also remained connected to the art business world. He started out in graphic design. A color print of Company for Supper was produced by the Thomas D. Murphy Calendar Company of Red Oak, Iowa. And it was called actually To Grandfather's House We Go, based on the song, the New England Boys Song about Thanksgiving Day, which we also know as Over the Rivers and Through the Woods, which was written by Lydia Marie Child in 1844. In addition, General Mills produced a tray, which you can see in the lower right corner. And the images, many of his images were printed on playing cards, decks of playing cards. While the works we've looked at are not on canvas, this quote by Nichols, I think, certainly sums up his work. Farm life was all I knew for the first 20 years of my life. In painting these canvases, I felt again the vastness of endless skies, experienced again the penetrating cold of Nebraskan winters, and lived again very much as farmers live. In spirit, I am very much a farmer. To learn more about Dale Nichols, major collections are found at the Bone Creek Museum of Agrarian Art and at the Museum of Nebraska Art. I hope these holiday scenes have warmed the cockles of your heart, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.